Sonic Forces Success Chapter 9 Raging Wars.
Quickly! Get to your stations. We have to hold off England the best we can. Hurry, hurry!
Princess Sally Acorn rushed almost every person that passed her, more with urgency than simply anger. She caught a stumbling soldier with her arms, helping him back up. He gave a quick grin of thanks and continued on his way. There was at least 2,000 people that lived in Knothole, and most of the citizens have joined in the attempts to fight Eggman back. The number of people kept rising too, thanks to the survivors that soldiers and heroes alike had found during small in-between missions. Not that Sally was complaining, the more people they had the better their cause. It was just already difficult for them to feed and house the citizens that already lived in Knothole, and now that there was half that number of people, she wasn't sure how long their supplies would last until they would have to actually go out and search for them, which would be rather dangerous now, especially in these dark and stressful times. She would have to remind herself to take inventory of the stock that is left in their rather large storage department. Boy, what a task that will be.
Sally!
The squirrel turned her attention to Tails and Rotor, running up to her.
We're here! What's going on?
The fox asked.
Eggman's attacking the city above us. We can't let him find out where we are, and we have to try to keep him from taking it over.
Sally responded.
So he hasn't found us yet.
Rotor sighed in relief.
Oh no, he has. That's the one reason why he's here, so he can dig us up.
What do you need us to do?
Tails asked seriously as Rotor's face fell.
Anything you can. Find survivors, bring them here, take out as many ships as you can. We cannot let him pass through.
The fox gave a fierce nod at her instructions.
Okay, then I'll head to my plane and fire at the enemy.
Sally smiled at his determination.
Good idea. But take a small squad with you. You might need the help.
She turned to a coincidentally passing pilot, pointing at him and saying,
Find a small group of pilots and wait for Tails. He'll lead an assault in the air while we take out what we can on the bottom.
Yes, ma'am.
The soldier said with a salute to her, and then to Tails.
See you out there, Captain.
As the soldier ran off, Tails blinked.
Captain?
Well, you are leading them.
Sally said with an amused smile.
Captains are usually the leaders. Think you can handle it?
Tails stared at her for another second, then shook himself and grinned.
You can count on me.
And he too took off, hurrying towards to where the planes were held. Sally watched after him for a moment, then looked over at Rotor.
Go and try bring in some rescuees. Once you're done with that, come back here. I know you're not really one to fight, so helping down here with repairs will be the best for you.
Of course, Sally.
Rotor said.
Anything to help.
And he left her as well. She watched him leave for a moment, and decided it was time to do her part.
Nicole,
Sally called as she jogged through the HQ's halls.
is everyone I asked for ready and accounted for?
The AI formed next to her.
Yes. The Chaotix, Team Dark, Silver, Blaze, Knuckles and Amy are all accounted for.
Good.
Sally said with a satisfied nod.
It's time for some action.
Tails POV.
The prospect of me leading a squad was, in all senses that I had at the time, unnecessary. I had a plan of my own, had one from the moment I stepped out of the room I was given, and it didn't necessarily need to include anyone else. If anyone else had found out, I was certain that they would have restricted me from doing anything in the Resistance, at least until I had come to my senses. Senses or not, I was following through with my plan. So, the minute the assembled squad Sally had assigned to me had gotten together, I had flipped into the plan that was given to me. Since my beloved tornado is hidden in the depths of my workshop, I couldn't use it. Trying to get to it would be rather dangerous, and lifted into the sky, the squad following behind me in formation. I shouted a few orders, reminded them to stay as safe as possible, and went on my own way after they gave their responses. They split in different directions, going after all the smaller ships spread out into the sky above. I went straight for the biggest. My hopes were that Eggman himself was in there. Truth was, I hadn't exactly forgiven the fat egg-shaped human for doing what he did to not only the world, but to my best friend. I had faked these last few days, faked the smiles and the laughing to hide the growing, burning rage and grief, so that I could eventually make it where I was now, so that I could finally make Eggman regret what he had done. In other words, I wanted revenge. I bet you think I'm smarter than that, being as I can do lots of other stuff. I bet you're shaking your head, saying that that's not what Sonic would have wanted me to do. But I didn't care. I was too wrapped up in everything I was feeling the past week or so, and the moment I was free from any eyes that could see the anger in my actions, was the moment it all disappeared. I set my eyes on the window before me, on the ship before me, thumbs hovered over the triggers. I waited for the target to lock on, keeping my eyes set forward, and as soon as it had centered, I slammed my thumbs down. I turned the plane around the ship as I made my first onslaught of bullets and missiles, the background noise of the battle drowning as my arms vibrated uncomfortably. Despite having no idea what I was going to do next, and despite the fact that I was unaware of my own safety, I must have miraculously hit something important. I pulled out of the dive as something on the ship exploded behind me. I looked up in the mirror, seeing as the side of the ship began to go up in flames. That fueled my determination, and I turned the plane upside down and over. I reached across the dashboard, pressing a few buttons as I held the large machine steady with one hand, loading a torpedo into position. The plan was to finish the job as quickly as possible with one fluid explosion. It might have been my only plan at the time, but a plan was a plan. I sat back into my chair once finishing the loading sequence, doing the numbers in my head as I neared the hole in the side of the ship. At the same time, a static came over the radio.
Tails, what are you doing?
Came the voice of Amy, sounding rather frantic. Honestly, I have no idea anymore. I replied truthfully. I've been winging it ever since the beginning. As I drew ever nearer, thumb once again held in its earlier position, Amy practically screamed.
What? No, what? Never mind, you need to get out of there now. It was all a trap from the beginning.
What do you mean? I said in a panic, momentarily looking at the radio before looking back up again.
Eggman's forces infiltrated Knot Hole the minute we had all left and scattered our forces. We're being overrun, you gotta come back.
Too late! I shouted, my thumb having pressed down on the trigger before she had even finished. I watched the torpedo soar towards its target as the gravity of Amy's words fell upon my shoulder. I heard her say something else, but the moment was silent in my ears. My eyes stayed glued to the ship, with my own plane growing ever closer. By the time I realized my mistake, there wasn't enough time to escape. The world seemed to shake with the explosion that commenced, was thrown in every which way, the world blurring together in so many colors that I couldn't keep up. The seatbelt that held me to my seat seemed to dig into my fur as the plane groaned in heat radiating from the explosion. I realized in my brief moments of consciousness that the ship I aimed for wasn't a ship at all. It was a massive bomb. A massive bomb that I had set off. Then there was a powerful jolt, my head snapped back, and the world instantly went black.
The plane that had crash-landed lay buried in its own pile of grass, dirt, and rubble, its entire body broken and torn in more ways than one. The propellers in the front span ever so gently, as if trying to whir itself back into life. The forest that surrounded the crash site had fallen silent ever since trees had snapped, roots had been pulled up, and a resounding boom had echoed in the still and waiting air. No other movement had been made for a while. No other sound was heard besides the tiny beeping that came from the flashing red light in the cockpit of the pilot's seat. The pilot himself lay sprawled on the floor next to the poor machine, eyes closed and breath coming through his mouth ever so gently. A gash was seen in the side of his head, blood trickling down his yellow fur ever so gently, as if to not disturb the sleeping fox in his dreams. But then the upper half of his body seemed to ricochet off of the ground as he gave a gasp, and then winced with pain as his head instantly throbbed with the fluid motion. He pressed a hand against his injury, hissed, and brought his hand away again. Tails sat there for a moment, waiting for the pounding of his head to subside slightly before he turned to see what was behind him. Understanding dawned on his face once his eyes had set on the plane, and with that understanding came a swift flood of tears in the corners of his eyes, as well as regret. He looked away from the wreckage, curling his legs up to his chest and hugging them, his tails moving around his form. He came to the conclusion that going back would only cause trouble. What he had done. He found he couldn't forgive himself, and so he thought they wouldn't forgive him. He was only a burden to them, he thought. A burden that shouldn't be worried over. And so he buried his face into his arms and cried alone.